So the floor is yours.
Okay, so our first speaker, Hadi Sharma, will speak on nanotechnology and nanomedicine.
Thank you once again, and the honor of giving you some ideas in basic science and nanomedicine. Those who were earlier in AMN, few slides will be repeated because this is the work on nanomedicine. And I tell you that this is our team: Dr. Muresanu, Jose Vicente Lafuente from Spain, Ranjana Patnaik from India, Ryan Tian and Asia from University of Fayetteville, and Herbert Mosler from Austria, and my wife Aruna Sharma. So this is a collaborative work with funds from various organizations, including US government, US Air Force, Swedish Strategic Research Foundation, and of course Dr. Muresanu's organization, RoNeuro, Ever Pharma. I am from Uppsala University. And I have to tell you that whatever I am speaking, it is my personal view. It has nothing to do with any government organizations or officials working with me. When I did in 1982 a doctoral thesis, first doctoral thesis, I was always amazed what is the role of brain as a special. And then we find it out that brain is unique because it has a blood-brain barrier that is not found in other non-CNS organs except some testes and other things, eyes also. So blood-brain barrier is very important, and that could be one of the regions that it protects the brain. But there are also some other aspects. When we have disease, it also stops drugs to going there for the treatment. So these two aspects are important for the maintenance of normal central nervous system function. So what can we do and what we could understand? Why blood-brain barrier is very important in the brain? Of course, when we talk about neuroprotection, we are talking about protecting the neurons. But we have much more glial cells in the number and also the endothelial cells. So we focus our research on blood-brain barrier or endothelial cells, how they can maintain the homeostasis of nervous system and how different kinds of drugs will be helpful in protecting the brain in disease conditions. And this is the cerebral capillary that protects both neurons and the environment. Its anatomical location lies between the tight junctions of the two endothelial cells, and here is lanthanum. This is the classical observation from Dr. Brightman and Rees from NIH, and this lanthanum stops at the tight junctions. This was the first discovery of anatomical location of the blood-brain barrier. I am basically a pathologist, so I have interest in how cells are destroyed or repaired at light and electron microscopy. And my mentor is Professor Yngve Olsson from Uppsala University in Sweden. Of course, I also get training from Professor Servus Navarro in Germany. He is one of the leading neuropathologists and once designated in Japan the legend of neuropathology from Europe. And of course, I took some training from electron microscopy. We are working on the theory that blood-CNS barrier is the key for all neurological diseases, and therefore this should be strengthened in disease conditions because it is normal if we are normal. Working with different kinds of organizations, including US military, we understand that our soldiers have a very tough job to maintain, either in normal conditions like maintaining law and order or even in combat situations. So this is quite common situations among them, and they are regularly exposed to various hazardous particles or nanoparticles. So that is one of the main ideas that we started working on, the nanoparticle effects on the brain. And on the other hand, we also try to have better delivery to the brain using nanoparticles or nanomedicine. I will come up with these ideas to you briefly. This is one of the examples taken from US military files that how missile explosion can occur normally almost every day during the battlefield, and how our soldiers are involved in breathing various kinds of nanoparticles, including carbon and all other things. This is another US military file that our soldiers are exposed to dust storm, and also this is the normal situation in battleground. This is another example. I showed you this before. So therefore, this is the need of the hour to protect the barrier under all circumstances. And if it is broken down or increased permeability to large molecules, for example proteins, we have to somehow close it using drugs and other technologies. This is Dr. William Slicker. He is the director of US FDA in Jefferson, and we have worked something in collaboration on the nanoparticle aspects. Before I go further, I want to emphasize that we all are human beings, and together with Professor Morisano, we discussed the effect of hypertension because he is one of the leading clinicians treating neurological diseases. So it is quite common that patients are either suffering from a stroke or even traumatic brain injuries. They have mild to moderate hypertension. And under those situations, hypertension can be induced by stress even you don't know. So when there is hypertension and you have further injury, the consequences of those could lead to higher or greater pathophysiological damage. So we try to understand how hypertension can influence the pathophysiology of brain. When we did the experiments, we produced hypertension in rats using mild renal hypertension, clipping one of the renal arteries, leaving 2 kidneys intact. That's the model cord, and we exposed them to silica dust. Then we also did at 33 degrees Celsius and also lower temperature. I can show you that these are the changes, blood-brain barrier leakage in different areas of the brain. Here is cortex, hippocampus, striatum, thalamus, hypothalamus, brainstem, and spinal cord. These different things are showing that when we have hypertension and silica exposure, you can see that 33 degrees Celsius resulted in highest increase in the permeability in all areas of the brain. This is further exacerbated when we have subjected to immobilization stress. So stress, hypothermia, and silica dust causes greater damage to the brain. This is an example you can see here that at 33 degrees Celsius, the damage is much more higher if we combine with stress and silica exposure. The point is, what are the important aspects causing exacerbation of brain in hypertension and silica dust exposure? Well, we just used tumor necrosis factor alpha because it has been shown earlier that this is not good for the health. So we have used antibodies to tumor necrosis factor alpha using titanium dioxide nanowires, and you can see that the expression of nitric oxide is much reduced, and this is the situation of hyperthermia. So it means that if we have hypertension, we are more exposed or vulnerable to brain injury or even silica dust exposure. What happens to the other common disease called diabetes? We did the same experiments. The animals were made diabetic experimentally. This is streptozotocin is a drug that can produce diabetes. And here is diabetes plus silica dust alone, and diabetes plus saline. This is the leakage of albumin. You can see that silica exposure in diabetic groups has highest increase in the permeability as evidenced with albumin leakage. If we are right, then what about neuronal changes? You can see that neuronal damage is maximum in diabetes with silica dust as compared to the other two conditions. These observations are not artifacts because some people will understand that there could be some problems in neuropathology, so we went to electron microscopy, and you can see here that this is one of the axonal changes, myelin vesiculation, as compared to the other situations. This is highest myelin vesiculation and damage in diabetes with silica dust exposure. Well, some of these works were recognized by US FDA. Then we produced, just to make people aware, this volume of progress in brain research in 2009. And we discussed all these aspects with one of the Nobel laureates in chemistry, Dr. Aaron Ciechanover, and what he suggests that also ubiquitin expression, for which he got awarded this Nobel Prize, that ubiquitin expression can also be affected by nanoparticles and even hyperthermia. So the point is, why do we study nanomedicine? Is there any real need to study nanomedicine? The available evidences suggest that nanodelivery can deliver the drug much more efficiently than the parent drug alone. It may have long-lasting effects. It could have rapid penetration into the central nervous system. Because of nano-binding, it may be less degradable and could be wide distribution within the CNS. But what about neurotoxicity of the nanomaterials that are used for the drug delivery? We are also studying these aspects. We have a few questions on which we are working, and still we don't find the real answer. The point is that whether different nanomaterials used to label the drug may have different effects, and also this neurotoxicity versus neuroprotection. So we started since 2004 studying both aspects. This was one of the example with discussion with US military and other organizations. Sleep deprivation is very important to stress. Can it affect biological functions of the brain? This is a file picture from US military. You can see that our soldiers have to spend nights like this, and most of them 4 to 6 hours sleep. This is an example conducted by US Navy, that if the sleep is less than 4 to 6 hours, even soldiers are not very able to have simple calculation of the maths. I'm showing the other example here, also from US military files, that 72 hours sleep, you can see simple calculation of mathematics is deteriorated. This is another example that if we have good sleep for 6 to 8 hours, the mental functions are quite good. You can see the 7-hour sleep, and it is deteriorating 4-hour sleep. So this is very important. Perhaps this is due to a neuropharmacological aspect. When we are sleep deprived, many substances in the blood, for example, serotonin or other chemicals are elevated. They may directly or indirectly affect our brain function, and some of them are also mediators of blood-brain barrier and brain edema formation. So what we did ondansetron. This is a 5-HT3 receptor antagonist. There are 7 receptors and subtypes of serotonin. Serotonin has the most highest number of receptors and subreceptors in the central nervous system. We have used, for example, ondansetron. But the question is, can effect of sleep deprivation be exacerbated by presence of nanoparticles? So here in this experiment, we have used, these are the 12, 24, 48 and 72 hours of sleep deprivation. You can see just sleep deprivation produces neuronal damages. When we have added copper or silver nanoparticles, this damage is much more exacerbated. Then we have used ondansetron 2 mg per kilogram intraperitoneally, and we can see that there is neuroprotection but much less efficient. But when we have used titanium dioxide nanowire ondansetron even 1 mg, we have very good neuroprotection. It means nano delivery of drugs even in half of the doses are quite effective. Then we know that not only serotonin or histamine or many other things are released, even there is a problem in the neurotrophic factors. So we are working with Professor Moresanu on the drug called cerebrolizin since 2004. So we just wanted to test that what will happen if we deliver this drug using nanowire delivery. This is closed head injury, and some of these slides were shown earlier. So this is our model of closed head injury, and I can tell you that in these situations, because of counter-coup mechanism, the opposite side, non-inflicted side, will have much more injury because the brain have fluctuations or enclosed cranium. So you can see here that left side showing much more damage, and this is also clear at the electron microscopy level. I showed this picture earlier also because temperature can also affect the brain pathology, and I can just repeat that even 5 degrees Celsius or 34 degrees Celsius, this cold and hot both can exacerbate neuronal damages as compared to the normal temperature brain injury. Then here is the sleep deprivation. You can see that when we have sleep deprivation for 24 or 72 hours, there is permeability increase, and in combination with head injury, it is much more increased in both left and right side. The question is delivering of nanowires. This is the pioneer who developed nanowires for electronic use. We are using now in medicine. And this is the picture of nanowires that we are using with our friend Dr. Ryan Tian at the University of Fayetteville. This is Dr. Ryan Tian and this is Dr. Van. And of course, we have support from Arkansas State, and this is the immediately past governor of Arkansas. So cerebrolizin is a multimodal drug. It is a mixture of different types of neurotrophic factors and active peptide fragments. We have used this, and you can see here at electron microscopy that 24 hours and sleep deprivation after head injury, there is much more damage in the brain. And when we have given cerebrolizin, it is protecting both the conditions. And just to encourage us, or just to have some type of confirmation of our ongoing research on nanowire cerebrolizin in combination with other drugs, I have my pleasure to tell you that when my wife Aruna Sharma submitted this innovation together with Dr. Murazanu and our team, as I showed you earlier, the combination it got top 15% of all submitted innovations in National Innovation Summit in May of US government. And this was the innovation that when nanowire cerebrolizin is given together with alpha MSH, sleep deprivation, sleep has something to do with melanocyte stimulating hormone, and we have found nice neuroprotection. This is the example and this is the award. Okay, to test our hypothesis briefly, that if we give nanowire delivery of either cerebrolizin or some other drugs, do we have same kind of neuroprotection? In this case, we are working with our friend from Shijiazhuang, and we have used a Chinese herbal drug, PLNBP. This is our team. This is Dr. Fung, and this is their team in Shijiazhuang Army Hospital. And this is the Chinese plant. This NBP is used to treat stroke and also in some cases of Alzheimer's disease, and there are many papers published in this area. We have done the same thing, and what you can see here, that 60 milligram of the drug given after 24 hours, the study is for 24 hours, we have good protection as compared to the untreated one. But when we have given nanowire, even 40 milligram, we could have better neuroprotection in this group. So this suggests that nanowire delivery of drug, whether cerebrolizin or in this case this Chinese medicine, is equally effective. And here, the case you can see here, breakdown of the blood-brain barrier and also edema formation were considerably reduced. I can show you this is the picture here. We have given nanowire 40 milligram here, and all the levels are totally flat here. So these are the observations that suggest that this Chinese medicine is important and can have neuroprotective effects in concussive head injury. This is the first report, and even nanowire delivery is much more better. And briefly, I will show you some of the results on spinal cord injury. And in this case, it is quite clear that spinal cord injury is one of the main factors in any kind of work-related injury. We have a model of a spinal cord injury in which we make unilateral lesion of one of the dorsal horns. The idea is that we must compare the effect of drug in the ipsilateral and contralateral side. And here is the example. We have again exposed to silica dust, and you can see that this spinal cord is much more worse than this. Both are traumatized, but silica exposure is giving much more wide expansion and damage. This will show you clearly that this is saline treated injured spinal cord. You can still see the gray matter is preserved, but look at this. Same type and same kind of injury, almost completely reduce this neuropil, and neurons are severely damaged. The question is, what will happen if we use 5 or 10 drugs and give them using titanium nanowire delivery? Are we going to have the same result of all drugs irrespective of what their properties are? The answer is no. You have to have good drug. That will work better rather than you have a bad drug. And this is an example here. We have used different kinds of drugs, like just random number, SCI 2, 3, 1. And you can see that here is this compartment is having all neuroprotective area, even controlled and laminectomized. This is the most damaged compartment. You can see here that this compartment, this drug SCI-01, when delivered nano delivery, had the best effect as compared to this is the worst effect, and some of the drugs are in between. So the point is that you have to have good drug delivered. Not all drugs could be neuroprotective just using nanowire delivery. And this is an example. The drug AP713 has the best result here as compared to the untreated one. I think I will just show you a few examples of nano delivery in Alzheimer because of limited time, and I will skip this. And I can only tell you that this is the result of the brain pathologically when we have Alzheimer's disease. And I can show you or tell you that all kinds of components in the brain, glia, neurons, and endothelial cells are affected. So this is the picture that we have used mesenchymal stem cells nanowired, and that was nanowire cerebralizing was given in 2013 to me in neuropathic pain. I just skipped that. The point is that you have heard, some of you have heard that Alzheimer's disease basic cause is amyloid beta protein, and we have measured this, and you can see that this was in mice. When we have given cerebralizing, the effect was better. When we have given nanowire cerebralizing, the effect is even much more better. The same thing is happened with that phosphorylated tau. We have heard, some of you have heard this morning, and you can see that nanowire cerebralizing given have the best results by down-regulating the tau. I can show you some example here that this is the Nissl staining in Alzheimer, GFAP, and albumin leakage. Titanium nanowire cerebralizing when injected before or sometimes after the in Alzheimer's disease model in animals, you can see there is neuroprotection is quite evident. Also at the ultrastructural level, this amyloid beta peptide infusion, this is a standard model, produces myelin vesiculation, nanowire cerebralizing here, and cerebralizing alone. When we have combined nanowire cerebralizing and mesenchymal cells, you can see that ABP infusion after traumatic brain injury that exacerbates has much better neuroprotection here. And this is Dr. Croto. We are working with some aspects of small fragments of peptide using nanowire delivery and see how Alzheimer's disease can be affected in future. So I stop here and look forward to your questions and comments. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Any questions?
What happens to the nanoplasmids?
Pardon?
What happens? what happens to the nanoparticles? They go into the brain, do they come out again?
Oh, this is a very good question. Nanoparticles, they have long life, and once they enter into the brain or any tissue, they probably stay there for a longer time. And that's why this is very important. We have to find those kind of nanoparticles that they are rather innocuous. And that's why we are using titanium, because this is quite innocuous when given alone, intravenously or intraperitoneally in the brain. We don't see any changes up to 6 months, and that is the problem. Also, even soft nanoparticles, they can also stay in tissues for 6 months or 2 years. So this is the real problem that we need to investigate more, but they will stay.
Other questions?
Okay, thank you. Then I have my honor to invite Professor Stephen Skapper for the next presentation.
Okay. Actually, I want to start, before I start with this, I just want to extend a word of thanks to Professor Lumsano for organizing these meetings. Actually, last year we were sort of celebrating 10 years of the summer school. It seems like it's been about a week since we did that. We're already on the starting our second decade is very successful in the schools. So thank you very much for all your efforts. Okay, what I'm going to talk about today is myelination and demyelination. Now, multiple sclerosis